Yo, what's good, YouTube? This is Jay from TNJ, and welcome to the second offseason in the Green Bay Packers franchise. Now, going into this offseason, I think we have more work to do than last offseason because I thought that we were building on something going into season 2, but we regressed. We were 8-9, a playoff team nonetheless, but our division was horrible. We need to definitely make this roster a lot better. We saw a lot of holes, but we did have some good news coming out of season 2. Rashawn Gary and Romeo Doubs are both Pro Bowlers, so that's pretty awesome. And then looking at the playoffs, where we lost in the wild card round to the Saints 48-21. The Saints went all the way to the NFC Championship, ended up losing to the Eagles, and the Cleveland Browns win the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow wins NFL MVP, Zach Taylor Coach of the Year. But our boy, Rashawn Gary, will win Defensive Player of the Year in the NFC. And our other boy, rookie Vince Mumphrey, wide receiver out of Florida, wins Rookie of the Year. We did have a few good rookies this year. We had a very good draft class in season 1, but none better probably than Vince Mumphrey. Mumphrey definitely added that number 1 or 2 option in the offense. I think that depending on the game plan, it's going to be Romeo Doubs or Mumphrey. He gets the superstar dev upgrade. He is going to be a fine player. 98 speed. That was an early upgrade too. That also means we get to add some abilities to him. There are a ton of them. He's not quite at the point where he can unlock every single one, but there are some good ones here. Return man is interesting. You know, I thought that he would be more of an impact as a returner, but it hasn't been that way, so I will probably stay away from that ability. Deep in elite, I actually like that one because it allows you to run deep routes pretty accurately, but I'm going to do run in elite. It's a better superstar trait for his game and what we do in this offense. And then obviously Rashawn Gary gets the upgrade after winning Defensive Player of the Year after a 19.5 sack season. We really did sign him at the right time. I mean, he was definitely going to be hitting free agency and getting some money, a lot of it, and we paid him probably less than what he's probably worth right at this moment. A lot of traits here for Rashawn Gary, but I'm definitely going to make one, or at least choose one that's going to be geared towards him creating more sacks. So I will use double or nothing, which spends double the pass rush points, but gives him dominant wins, and then under pressure, which allows him to apply pressure further from the quarterback. So even when he's not winning matchups, he's going to force the quarterback to kind of move in the pocket. And when you move in the pocket, especially with these sliders, it's kind of hard to throw an accurate ball. So we go into the offseason, and the first step is re-sign players. And obviously AJ Dillon has not agreed to like 3 straight offers. And his tag is going to be $16 million, so I'm definitely not going to do that. We will try to possibly go after him in free agency. I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. Rodrigo Blankenship is due a contract extension. We have a ton of cap room going into the offseason of $142 million. That's mostly because all of the changes we made when this series started, so getting rid of Aaron Rodgers, all of that comes off the books officially. So now we have plenty of cap space, $138 million going into the offseason to be exact. Retirements this year, Matt Ryan retires, and he's probably the biggest name. There wasn't too many big names. Chandler Jones retires, Marvin Jones retires, Jason Verrett, Lane Johnson was an awesome Eagle for a lot of his career, Brandon Graham as well. And then some free agents that were never on teams like Cam Newton retired, but nobody too big left the game this year. So we hit free agency, and this is very, very interesting because a lot of big name players, some teams were caught up in some cap space issues and weren't able to retain their talents. That's exactly what happened here with the top 5 players. Jonathan Taylor probably just wasn't happy with the Colts, and he wants to move on. 99 overall. This is really rare that the number 1 player at a position hits free agency. He is amazing with 96 speed, freight train ability, superstar X factor. I mean, the guy is the best in the game. 25 years old, too. I mean, that is insane. Nick Bosa hits free agency coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. I'm surprised they wouldn't get this deal done, but obviously it's the cap issues. Probably just could not match him. Derrick Henry is here as well. And Derrick Henry is 30 years old, but still 99 overall. So he is still a very, very capable running back. Freight train ability also. And Justin Jefferson. This is the biggest surprise because there's probably no way the Vikings let him go. I mean, there's obviously no way. Justin Herbert does hit free agency. Now, I thought about controlling the Chargers and just trying to get that deal done, but I'm just going to let the game play out as it is. Kind of allow them to do their thing. I think out of all of those guys being free agents, Herbert is probably the most unrealistic. There's no way that the Chargers let go of a franchise quarterback. Usually if you find one, I mean, you're talking about a decade of quarterbacking. Even look at Andy Dalton. I mean, Andy Dalton was a franchise quarterback at one time, but he was pretty average. And they kept him around for, 8 years? I mean, it was something crazy like that. So there's no way they would let Herbert go. But a lot of interesting free agents, including some of our former players, are here. I do like the receiving core, but we really don't need receivers here this year. So I'm going to be focusing on other things such as stopping the run, blocking for our franchise quarterback, whoever that's going to be. But I first settle in on Jonathan Taylor. This makes a whole lot of sense. He went to Wisconsin for college. He wants about $12 million, but 7 years. That is a long time. But I went into free agency really, really wanting to re-sign A.J. Dillon. It's taken everything in my power to not go after Jonathan Taylor. But Dillon has been very, very productive for us. So we're going to offer him a deal. And it's going to be a player-friendly deal. We're going to give him this 5 years that he wanted, but we're actually going to give him a 6-year deal. And it's going to be a very strong offer. And I know a lot of you guys are probably going to say, you had Jonathan Taylor in your lap and you let him walk. But I want to be realistic. The chances that Jonathan Taylor is a free agent probably is slim to none. And I just don't agree with it. There have been running backs in, history that have hit free agency or at least been traded in their prime. Jerome Bettis comes to mind, Le'Veon Bell, LaShawn McCoy, guys like that. Doesn't happen too often, but we're going to pass up on that opportunity. Now, one thing we need to improve is our tackles, and Jonah Williams is a free agent. I decide to go after him. He has interest, and one thing I'm going to do with this is I'm only going to go after guys that are interested or ex or current players that played for Green Bay. So Jonah Williams is the first target that was not a Packer last season. So now we will go after Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver is an interesting defensive tackle. Obviously, coming out of college, he was probably touted as I wouldn't say a generational prospect, but before his senior season started, I believe it was his junior year actually, he was number 1 overall. He dropped down in the draft, went to the Buffalo Bills. But I like his potential still. He's in his mid-20s. We're going to offer him exactly what he asked for. We have the most cap space, so I don't know if we'll have much of any competition going after the top defensive tackle. Another spot I want to improve is really pass rush. We saw when you took Rashawn Gary out of games, you really had a good game plan from there because you wouldn't have to worry about blocking, obviously, the defensive player of the year now. So I look at a couple of guys. Charles Harris, he's an interesting outside linebacker, but only had 1 sack in the previous 2 seasons respectively. So just not good enough for me to really go after him. Then I look at Darrell Taylor. He's a number 29th ranked right outside linebacker. I'm not looking for somebody that's going to break the bank here, but a guy that can get after the quarterback. He had 6.5 sacks last year. That's kind of good enough for me. If he can get 5-6 sacks in a season, I'm not going to expect him to be the full-time starter. Obviously, Mordecai Muhammad is opposite of Gary, but maybe giving Muhammad some breathers can really help him. So I'm going to decide to go after him, and we will see if he does accept that deal. Safety is another position I want to improve. We have Max Porter and Benjamin Mayfield, but Mayfield's going to kind of transition into an all-around safety where he's going to play in the box, going to rush the passer at times. I really want him to be kind of a Micah Parsons-esque. Obviously, he's not going to be that good, but I want to move him around. And two guys that catch my eye, John Johnson and the former Green Bay Packer Darnell Savage. We traded Darnell Savage last offseason for a second-round pick from the Patriots, and the Patriots decided not to keep him around. So we will go back after Darnell Savage, bring him back. This would be like a free deal. Pretty much we trade him, get a second-round pick, and then get him back. That would be amazing. So we get our first good news of the offseason. A.J. Dillon re-signs with the Packers. Jonah Williams accepts his contract right away. Savage will return as well. And Darrell Taylor, all in the first stage. All except those deals. Amazing, amazing round right there. We obviously want to re-sign Randall Cobb, so I decided to offer him one of the cheap deals. We started at $1 million, but then we decided to up it to $3 million total 1 year, and he ends up accepting that. So after free agency, we find out that Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor literally switch teams. So Derrick Henry goes to the Colts, Jonathan Taylor goes to the Titans, Justin Herbert goes to the Washington Commanders, and Nick Bosa goes to the Vikings. A very, very big move for the division right there. Last year, it was the top safety in, I cannot think of his name right now, going over to the Chicago Bears, Derwin James. And then John Johnson goes to the Jaguars, so they end up getting him. I was obviously thinking about going after him, Fletcher Cox to the 49ers. So at least the 49ers try to replace Nick Bosa. We'll see what they do in the draft. Some interesting moves here in free agency. I'm interested to see where Jordan Love ended up going. We did not go after him at all. Obviously, Herbert to the Commanders, Tua to the Giants. Interesting move right there. Jalen Hurts moves on to the Colts because remember the Philadelphia Eagles did end up going after quarterback in last year's draft in Jeremy Hill. But then Jordan Love will go to the Carolina Panthers. So an interesting move right there from Carolina. They end up getting, obviously, our former quarterback. So here is the mock draft. Now, I want to talk about this draft really, really quickly. We obviously know about the top 3 quarterbacks, Johnny Smith, Osiris Kane, and then we'll see coming up here a couple of other guys in David Rathman. There are some new guys that have crept up the board a little bit, but this draft is very, very defensive end heavy. This is the strongest position in the draft. Last season, it was tackle, and you can just see there are a lot of defensive ends going early. Nathan Hazelwood is the 4th rated quarterback in the draft, so there could be 4 quarterbacks taken before we even select at 19. They're projecting that we will go defensive tackle and Will Lynch. I'm not sure if we will go there just because we just signed Ed Oliver in free agency. We had a pretty good free agency. So now we have a pick in every single round. We have pick 19 in every round in this draft. But we'll see what happens and how this draft falls. I'm not even sure if we'll go quarterback first round. Obviously, we have Emmett McCall still on the roster. Could we commit to him? But obviously the top 4 quarterbacks, Osiris Kane, David Rathman, Johnny Smith, and Nathan Hazelwood. Out of all of those quarterbacks, I'm not sure who's really a top 5 talent. They may be top 5 projected, but I'm not sure who is a top 5 talent. So we need to do our due diligence and select some super focused players, guys that we will get the most out of. We get 3 selections here. I decided to go after quarterback Cordell Washington. He is the 5th rated quarterback just to see what he's like. I decided to go after Jacob Hendricks and then Triplett, who is a center out of Wisconsin. Now, Jacob Hendricks is interesting. He is a guy that is projected day 3 pretty much, or at least day 2, round 2 to 3. But he is athletic linebacker. I definitely want to see what he can do. I know he can cover well, but can he get after the passer? I said going into the offseason, I want to improve rushing the passer. We end up, unlocking some more things out of him, but this is what attracted me to him. Look at that athletic profile. He is elite in everything. I mean, everything. So we unlock some more of his skills, and he ends up being actually pretty good. A, awareness, B, play recognition, but he cannot rush the passer. F, power moves, D, finesse moves. We then unlock the true ratings of Cordell Washington, a guy that is a mobile quarterback, kind of the Lamar Jackson-esque mold. He ends up being pretty good, but we will see what happens during the draft, and if we decide to go after him, I guess we'll have to find out. Philip Triplett ends up being a really good center. I'm not sure if I will take center early on in the draft, but you never know how the draft can shake up. So here we go. We will start the NFL draft. The Jets have the number 1 pick. We have the 19th pick in every single round. 8 picks total with 2 7-round picks. And the Jets on the clock, they have their franchise quarterback in Zach Wilson. So I don't think they will go that. They don't decide to go Trent Epstein, right tackle out of Tennessee. This is an interesting pick because last year, tackle was the strongest position. He would have probably went 5th in tackles last year. The Lions decide to shore up this defense. They really do need it. Remember, they were like last ranked in offense and like 3rd to last in defense. So Parker Fitzsimmons, hopefully he can contribute to this Lions D. We will see. The first quarterback of the board goes to pick number 3, Osiris Kane. The Seattle Seahawks signed Baker Mayfield in the offseason last year. Now they decide to go quarterback. They don't believe in Baker right away. Maybe they will groom this kid, maybe sit him a year and play him, or they might play him right away. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I mentioned this draft was high defensive end heavy. BJ Evans is the top guy. He was the consensus top defensive end in the draft, 75 overall. He's going to be pretty good. The top overall quarterback ratings-wise ends up being David Rathman, going to the Colts, where Jalen Hurts just signed. Interesting. I've got to be honest. David Rathman was not a guy I was looking at closely, and I probably should have. He would have been 80 overall starting out as a rookie. The top guard goes to the Jags. The Jags obviously have Trevor Lawrence. They're not looking quarterback, so I wasn't worried about this. But now I started to worry about maybe I'm going to miss out on a quarterback maybe that I want. And I look at the 49ers. They have Trey Lance. They could have went quarterback here. They decided not to. But the next pick in the draft, the Chicago Bears, they decide to go defensive tackle. I wasn't sure if they would go quarterback here, knowing that they have Justin Fields. Deshaun Spillman is actually pretty average. I don't like this pick at all. I think this is probably a bad selection, but this was definitely a need selection, but he won't even start. So they need a defensive lineman. They decided to go after Spillman and commit to Justin Fields at quarterback. I don't know if the future draft classes will be good at quarterback, but they decide to commit to Justin Fields. Very, very interesting move by the Bears. They obviously have Odell now and Juju Smith-Schuster, and they also traded for Treylon Burks. But the next pick is the Vikings, and they go quarterback Johnny Smith. So they move on from Kirk Cousins in the offseason. They do not re-sign him. He declines pretty sharply with his ratings as he does age. Johnny Smith looks like he's going to be pretty good. The question for him coming out of Alabama was, is he surrounded with too much talent that he won't show up in the NFL? The top cornerback will go to the Chargers. I'm surprised they didn't go quarterback here. I thought that if they moved on from Justin Herbert, they would possibly go quarterback. The Bills decide to get another tackle who actually could be rated higher than the number 1 overall pick in Darren McDonald. And Darren McDonald is more of a, I'd say, a run blocking defense or right tackle. I'm curious to know if he will actually progress pretty well. The second cornerback in the draft is Roman McManus. He goes to the Giants. Nothing special about him. He ends up being 73 overall, 73-man coverage. But then the Cowboys decide to draft the replacement for DeMarcus Lawrence and Christopher Sprinkle. Christopher Sprinkle has 79 from finesse moves, 80 if you take away that morale dip there. But I think he's going to be pretty good. And he's 21 years old. That is pretty good value they get right there at the bottom half of, I guess, the first round. Jamal Carson ends up going to the Patriots, so they get rid of Darnell Savage and then end up drafting a safety in the first round. I guess that's a way to, lock somebody up for 5 years if you have to. But that's a good pick right here. I think if they, lose a safety, obviously gain a safety. Well, I was thinking about going after one tackle in this draft if I did not sign any in the free agency period. And Lonnie Bayless was my pick. He ends up being actually pretty good. 73 overall would have been okay. He has like good ratings starting out, so I wouldn't have been too, mad with that pick. Another defensive end goes off the board to the Texans. And like I said, I'm surprised that a lot of these teams are not drafting quarterback. I thought the Texans would have been a pretty prime destination too. The Washington Commanders go Brian Anderson, another defensive end. I mean, look at these defensive ends flying off the board. Makes you think we're missing out, but looking at these overalls, I don't think we are. I wouldn't want a guy that's in like low 70s with our first pick. But then the Broncos shock the world. The pick before we pick, I thought we would have the pick of the litter here between Nathan Hazelwood and our man Washington, who we just got done focus scouting with. But the Broncos make a huge move. That says a lot about Russell Wilson. Are they thinking about moving on from him eventually? Or are they worried about paying him long term? I'm not even sure. So we're at our pick now. And I look at two guys. The first is Donovan Brooks. Donovan Brooks is interesting. I just signed Ed Oliver in free agency. He is a round 1 to 2 talent. But I think Cordell Washington is something special. Now, he is the 5th rated quarterback in the draft. But with the first pick, 19th pick in the first round, the Green Bay Packers will select Cordell Washington out of TCU. His biggest attribute is obviously his legs. But one of the most underrated things he can do is throw under pressure. He's got an 86 rating throwing under pressure. Decent accuracy. Medium accuracy goes up to 81 without that morale dip. But obviously the athletic profile fits what kind of the new NFL is. He's 87 speed, so he can definitely bail us out of situations. He's got a good arm too, a 94 throw power. Doesn't have any player tags, so I don't know what that really means. The next pick ends up being Garrett Aiken going to the Rams. So the Rams get another pass catcher. Hopefully Matt Stafford stops staring down Cooper Kupp. I think that's going to be his Achilles heel in his second year with the Rams in real life. Donovan Brooks goes 2 picks later. Ends up being 1 overall less than what we got in Cordell Washington, but actually pretty good ratings to start out. 89 strength, 76 power moves. That's pretty good if you ask me. Kevin Williams ends up going next. He is a hidden dev trait defensive end here. He goes to Carolina, so he will join Jordan Love over in Carolina. I actually thought Jordan Love was going to sign with maybe the Vikings in the offseason. That would have been interesting, but he ends up signing Carolina. Clayton Conley, another defensive end, goes to the Raiders. Wonder if one of these first-round picks will work out for the Raiders. They have had terrible, I wouldn't even know if this is called luck, but I guess they just haven't done their due diligence. I don't know. Maybe some of it is luck, some of it is due diligence. But another first-round pick going to the Raiders. Andrew Bruce, another end. How many defensive ends are going to go in the first round? This is an incredibly deep defensive end draft. I would like to see rookies rated a little higher, especially going in the first round. But now we finally get one in Tyquan Jackson, but he's actually 74 overall. He is the top rated receiver, but look at his attributes. Pretty good all around. His spectacular catches at 88 right now, but he does have a temporary boost. I don't know what that's from. Maybe it's just from location. I'm not exactly sure. Trayvon Favors goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. Decent left tackle. I mean, this isn't anything special, but at least he doesn't do anything terribly. Shaquille Breeland is probably going to be one of the best players in the draft. 87 speed as an edge rusher. He's got great play recognition, great awareness, Pretty good block shedding to start out as a rookie. Like, that's probably one of the best picks in the draft right there from the Falcons. Adrian Knox, another cornerback, the third of the first round here. He does have the future starter player tag, so he probably won't play right away. The Ravens add a receiver in Brandon Good. Another weapon for Lamar Jackson. Hopefully he can, kind of take the Ravens to the next level at the receiver core. And then the top running back in the draft goes all the way at the bottom here to the Saints, Jatavius Stroud. He is a good option here. Good speed, 93. I like that as a running back. He's got pretty good break tackle, and he's elusive, and he can, truck some guys as well. Philip Triplett, the guy that we actually focused on here, one of our focus players, ends up being actually not too bad, 73 overall. He probably would have started for us, but we decided to go with the quarterback instead. Michael Mellon goes to the Texans, and that will conclude the first round. So now we just pretty much focus on our picks. We have some favorites here in the second round. I really like, a receiver early on here, but I look at our needs, and we really need to stop the run. And Jacob Hendricks is still there. I'm wondering if he'll make it to our next pick. I'm not exactly sure. I just like Hendricks a lot in this spot, but I decide to go with what we need, and the best skill on the board is right end Josh Harris with the second round pick number 19 in the 2024 NFL draft. The Green Bay Packers stay home and will select Josh Harris, defensive end out of Wisconsin. He is a run stuffing specialist. He's probably going to start day one for us. He ends up being 73 overall, high block shedding for a rookie at 78. Obviously, the power moves and finesse moves are going to have to improve, but 87 strength, and he is absolutely massive too. I can't wait to see what he and Oliver, Mordecai Muhammad, and Rashawn Gary all look like right next to each other. Add Devontae Wyatt as well. With the third round pick number 19 in the 2024 draft, we decide to go receiver. Bobby Hopkins out of UCF brings something that we don't have right now on our squad, and that is size. Christian Watson's probably the tallest receiver on our squad right now. He's 6'3", but I need some more height. I need Bobby Hopkins, who's 6'4", 6'5". He can go up and get it. He's a guy that we can develop as well and maybe be kind of a deep threat or a red zone target, maybe a guy we can just throw it up to. And I'm not exactly sold on Christian Watson right now. He is slated right now to be the number 3 receiver in this core, but I have seen some pretty bad play from Watson, so adding some more insurance to that receiving core definitely is going to help. We move to the fourth round, and now we're looking at depth, and I need to be careful with how we're making these picks because obviously injuries happen. So we need to be able to cover ourselves. So with the 19th pick of the fourth round, we decide to go with Lindley here out of USC. Paul Lindley is 23 years old. Our lowest rated pick so far was 64 overall. I thought he would be a much better pass protector, but he has some work to do. His awareness is at 75. I actually like that because a lot of times if you don't have a good awareness offensive lineman, they end up being absolutely horrible. So we move on to the fifth round. I like our picks so far, but we have a couple of guys at our disposal here, and one position I still want to improve is pass rusher. Especially you talk about injury that could happen. We definitely need to be able to cover ourselves here. So with our fifth round pick number 19 in the 2024 NFL draft, the Packers select Mac Sprinkle out of Arkansas State. Sprinkle is an athletic pass rusher. I wanted a guy that can get after the passer, and that's why we passed on Jacob Hendricks. And Sprinkle looks good. Like, I'm not mad at this at all. Decent block shedding, good power moves. Obviously, everything else can improve, but I like his starting base. So with our next pick, I decide to actually add to the running back depth. And I go to Missouri. I went to this game, saw it. I liked what I saw from this kid. He is an elusive back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. So with our 6th round pick, we go with Brandon Locke out of Missouri. 91 speed, 90 acceleration. I wish he was a bit faster, but he can catch the football. So he's going to be in on passing downs. I want to kind of allow A.J. Dillon to, play a little more freely and not have to be tired all the time. And with our 2 7th round picks, not 2 huge picks, but we decided to get a depth quarterback, Henry Wilkins. But the best pick here at the end of the draft was Chris Forbes, a punter. We definitely needed one. And he actually has 82 speed. How is he so fast? So if we end up doing a fake punt, he actually has some pretty good accuracy as a quarterback as well. So watch out for that. Maybe once in a game we might do it. Now I decided to look at the guys we passed up on, and Jacob Hendricks went in the 2nd round, ends up being pretty athletic, 88 speed. But I'm actually glad we did not select him. 71 zone coverage he would have had. He would have had 78 awareness, which is pretty high, 81 pursuit. But I was looking for more of a pass rusher there, more than a guy that can cover. We end up passing on a pretty good receiver in Sean Buchanan in the 2nd round. He ends up being the highest rated receiver in the draft at 77 overall. So he was definitely a guy we passed on. Will Lynch was the guy that was mocked to us in that first mock draft we showed before the draft. He ends up being 74 overall and pretty good as a nose tackle. This would have been a pretty good pick, but I'm glad we got Cordell Washington with our 1st round pick. But I'm just happy with our roster overall now. It's clear that we're going to rock with the rookie Cordell Washington. I wanted to make it so that there's no competition. I wanted to kind of choose my quarterback and run from there. No switching this year. I went from Jordan Love to Emmett McCall during last season. I wanted to make it cut and dry this time around, and that's what we do. Now, receiver depth is something that I'm a little bit concerned with. Amari Rodgers and Christian Watson will compete for that 3rd spot. I'm not sure who will get it. And obviously you saw last year, there were flashes where Amari Rodgers looked like a really good receiver. But I don't know if he's going to be like a full-time number 3. I guess only time can tell. Obviously, we were set at tight end. Matthew Workman and McMacklin at tight end. Those guys will be going into their 2nd year. We do move Jonah Williams to left tackle, then end up moving Randy Reynolds over to right tackle. But our offensive line looks good. Maybe the one position I'm worried about is center. We need to get a backup center and maybe even upgrade there. I guess we'll have to see. We do have some trade chips with some of our backup offensive linemen now. Zach Tom is one because now he moves to the bench, and then Randy Reynolds moves over to right tackle. And right now, he's number 15 in the league, so that is pretty good. I like what we have at right tackle. Obviously, more of a pass protector to at right tackle. That's what I like. And then our defensive ends, obviously, we have Gerald Ballard, who we signed with our 7th round pick last year. But now our defensive line looks solid. Devontae Wyatt, Ed Oliver, TJ Slayton. Jonathan Ford won't play too much, but I think now that we add, Josh Harris in the offseason to our defensive end group, we're going to be really, really good. And then Rashawn Gary goes into the season, superstar dev. I mean, this is going to be a scary defensive line, especially getting after the passer. I think that's where we improve. And I'm also going to give Max Sprinkle some playing time as well. I'm going to give Rashawn Gary some breathers, obviously, sometimes. So I definitely want to get him in there. And then, obviously, Darrell Taylor is going to be our highest rated overall guy right now ahead of Mordecai, but he's going to not be the primary pass rusher, but he will get in rushing the passer. Like I said, if I can get 5-6 sacks from him, I will be happy. We last year had a cornerback on our practice squad, Kelvin Joseph. We sat him the entire year, but he is actually solid. Like, he has 77 man, 75 zone, I believe. That's really, really good to start out. And then obviously bringing in Darnell Savage will move Max Porter over to strong safety. And then Benjamin Mayfield will play kind of a hybrid linebacker role. You will see that change kind of this year. And I just like what we did here in the offseason. Here's our upcoming schedule. Now, this is interesting because right away we play the Vikings, who just drafted Johnny Smith, who a lot of you guys said we should go after, but I like what we got in Washington. I did like Johnny Smith as well, but Washington with the legs makes a difference. I'm curious to see how that will change this offense. and we'll see what happens here going into season number 3. So that is going to do it. We even play the Seahawks, and we will see what happens in season number 3. I'm excited for this. I'm getting straight into it. And I like that this year we had some cap space to make a few moves. We made some, really good signings, and let me know what you guys think. What would you grade this offseason? So hit subscribe, hit that like button. Season 3 is right around the corner. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
I like getting money, I got time to get it. Target on me, so my car's a tenant. Dancing with the devil, I don't bargain with it. Bobbing in the dash, and the stick is with it. And I hit the 4-5 on the west side. But I'm from the east side, this how we slide. This how we ride, yeah, this how we ride.